So Michael, this film is based on a book. Can you kind of tell us about the genesis of the project and what first inspired you to adapt it?
Yeah, about 5 years ago next month, we had just wrapped on shooting 500 Days of Summer, and our executive on that movie at Fox Searchlight gave us this book, The Spectacular Now. And the same way that 500 was a response to how Hollywood had been making romantic comedies, we love this book because it felt like a response to how Hollywood had been making movies about young people. More specifically, I was just tired of movies with vampires and wizards and superpowers and sex with baked goods and just crazy stuff like that. I grew up on the movies of John Hughes and Cameron Crowe, and the book felt as if it was in the spirit of that. That was 5 years ago. It started as a studio movie, and then people come and go at a studio, and they sort of fall out of love with your project just because it was never their baby. But Fox Searchlight was nice enough to give it back to us, and we proceeded to try to make it independently.
Now, Andrew Lauren produced the film The Squid and the Whale. Now, how did you come on board this project?
Well, yeah, the project went to a lot of people in town, and it went to probably all the producers. And even when it was at Searchlight, I was like, this is such a great script. Why are you guys not making it? And their issue was there's young kids drinking alcohol. And I was like, wait a second. I've seen so many PG and PG-13 movies with a lot worse things than young kids doing what they're doing in our film. What's your problem? And I just thought it was such a special project. It wasn't about alcohol. It was about love and romance and coming of age. And I was like, we got to make this. So finally, really, I mean, movies take 5 to 10 years. This one just happened so rapidly. I was like, let's go.
It happened rapidly for him. For us, we were waiting around for you to come along. And it was great because Andrew and the other producers, and this is where the benefit of making an independent film, we probably would have had 3 or 4 times as much money had we made it a studio movie. But then you start to get those studio notes, like, does there have to be sex and drinking? And do kids really act this way? And what about the language? And they kind of want a neat little bow on everything, which just, those aren't my favorite stories to tell. And Andrew was fearless and wanted to make the best movie and wasn't scared of the things the studios were afraid of. He didn't approach it from a marketing standpoint. He approached it from the standpoint of what's the best movie. That's very rare to find among producers and financiers. Usually you sometimes get even crazier notes than the studio. So we were very lucky to have Andrew come involved in early 2012. And then we were shooting it a few months later.
And hence this film is rated R, which is kind of ridiculous. Did you guys at all fight the rating? I mean, I wasn't aware of the rating myself until a couple days ago.
I think it's fine that it's rated R. The bigger issue personally I have is you can have a movie with lots of stuff blowing up and lots of people get shot and all that, and that's PG-13. So there seems to be violence. There's a lot more leniency with than sort of an honest look at young people.
I just remember growing up in the 80s, and I loved trying to sneak into rated R movies, so it's cool.
This film is so shocking.
It's funny you say that because it's not the sex or the language. It's really more than anything else the drinking that does give you a rating. That the MPAA, that's the thing that they're most concerned with.
Wow.
So we knew all along. We at no point thought this was going to be anything other than R. There was no one on set being like, oh wait, okay, they dropped 3 F-bombs, we can't have a 4th one. We just were like, what's the best movie? And we'll worry about all that stuff later.
Yeah. Now, 500 Days of Summer, is a decidedly quirky, kind of offbeat, off-kilter film. And this film is, in my mind, it's tonal opposite. It's so grounded in naturalness and reality. How would you describe your own voice as a screenwriter?
I write with a friend of mine, and we were friends first. We were fans of movies first, and I think everyone who's a writer starts as a fan. And I feel like I don't go to the movies as much as I used to. That's me personally. I don't really gravitate towards the big special effects and all that kind of stuff. For us, it's as simple as writing the movies we'd go see. And we were annoyed with how they've been making romantic comedies, and we're annoyed with certain trends with movies for young people, and we're going to continue to write the movies we want to go see. We start shooting in 3 weeks the adaptation of the book The Fault in Our Stars, which some of you might... Yeah, it's a really, really cool book. If you haven't read it yet, it's amazing. And we're going to be working with Shailene again. She plays Hazel Grace. The book's amazing. And again, it's another case where we were lucky enough to get that book even before it came out, not expecting it to become the phenomenon. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list for a year and a half. But it was as simple as we read this and thought, I'd go see this movie right away.
Now, when it comes to adapting a book like you are with your next film, what are the first steps in terms of, working out what to cover, how to adapt it?
Recently I've been doing more adaptations, and the best part of adapting is the first thing that happens is you fall in love with the book. And when you write an original idea, you can take it in so many different places. It's a little daunting at times how many different ways you can change it. And it's nice that with the book, first you fall in love with it, and then you realize, okay, how do I turn this into the best movie experience? You want to stay true to the book, but at the same time, it kind of has to stand on its own, even for people who haven't read the book. The Spectacular Now was not a hit book at the time it came out 5 years ago. It was nominated for the National Book Award for YA, but it wasn't selling particularly well. At the same time, we met the author, and it's scary for the author because they don't know what's going to happen, and there's so many horror stories of people turning a book into something completely different. We realize in the case of an adaptation, we're just kind of shepherding it along. And it's great that we've been trusted with some really good books. So usually the toughest thing is how do we narrow down what we want to use because there's so much good stuff.
And what is when did you first screen it for this author?
What did I what?
When did you first screen The Spectacular Now for the author?
The author did not see it until Sundance, which was the first time anyone saw it, and he was really happy. And he came to visit set for a couple of days. He's from Oklahoma, where the book is set. The only thing we changed of significance was the ending. The book ends, the scene with Miles Sutter in the bar with those barflies, that's pretty much the end of the book. He walks out of the bar and wanders along a highway drunkenly, and he picks up a piece of shattered glass, and it doesn't necessarily say he's going to die or get hit by a car, but it's very bleak. And I felt like the story deserved a more hopeful ending. And we didn't want it to be that two shiny Hollywood actors walk off into the sunset, but we didn't necessarily want the ending to be as bleak as the book either. So that's what we came up with.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, we're going to open it up. Go ahead. Just scream it out.
So the part, I haven't read the book, and the movie, I really liked it, but the part that jarred me the most was when she got hit by the car. And I guess there was a part of me that wondered if, now that I know that this is from a book, it was almost like slightly unbelievable to me that wasn't, something more serious, or that her parents didn't want to kill him or something. Did you tone it down for the movie?
That's pretty much what happens in the book. She's clipped. There is nearly a car accident. And everything's fine. So there's a moment of, okay, this is going to be, they're okay. And then comes the part that's supposed to scare the crap out of you. But yeah, she's clipped and is very lucky to obviously not have more severe injuries. To me, the most important part of all that is really the scene in the bedroom afterwards, because in another relationship, that could be it. That could be the conversation, we're done. And Amy's response is, let's not talk about it. We're going to get out of this town soon. Let's just focus on getting out of here. And you realize she quite hasn't finished sort of her arc yet of where she's going as a character. And I think the moment she arrives at who she is when Sutter does not show up at the bus station, and she has to make a choice. And she gets on that bus without him is really where her character has arrived as a person. And she's strong enough to do that now. But we totally understand from a production standpoint, we actually played around with the sound levels for months. In early cuts, if you thought this was scary, I mean, the earliest cut, it seemed like she should have been flattened like roadkill. And we had to play with the levels until we got it to where it's at now.
Yeah, no, we actually, because at Sundance, when we played it, it was like they were jumping out of their seats, and it was such a loud sound. And then we were all talking with our distributors, A24, it's like, we don't want people to be thrown out of the movie. And so then we were saying, and my solution was that she should say ow as the right way to go. Of course, I'm joking. But we came up, we saw, as Weber said, we definitely worked with the sound levels because that was an issue.
Yeah, I've seen both versions. I caught the tail end of the end. I caught the ending tonight, and I saw it at Sundance. And I gotta say, at Sundance, I thought she was dead. I mean, everybody, it's just gasp. Yeah. Does anybody else have a question? Right there.
Given that you had the R rating, and also given that that I know that you're all the Fault in Our Stars, were you tempted at all to make it a bit sexier? What I really love about the movie is it's so touchingly realistic. Like I know those kids. I went to high school with them. Was it tempting at all to push it a little bit further, given that you already had the rating?
We did push it quite a bit. In fact, most of the dialogue is scripted, but because our actors were closer to being a teenager, have been more recently than I have, we allowed them to sort of play around with it a little bit. At the same time, it's not a documentary, so there's sort of a balancing act there. But it's a very different thing than The Fault in Our Stars, and what attracted to us this book in the first place was that it just seemed like a good story, really interesting characters, and just an honest portrayal of young people, whether you're a teenager now or you were years ago.
Can you talk a bit about how you approach that sex scene? Because it's so delicate, so tender.
It's a really weird thing to write.
Yeah.
I remember when we wrote it, it was really bizarre of like how much, because normally a script is a map for a filmmaker to come in and take your map and make a movie. So you try not to get too bogged down in scene description because you want the read to be as quick as possible. And you can, stuff like, this actor looks at this actor. I mean, unless it's a really important beat, you don't need to put that stuff in there. It can all be worked out later. But for a sex scene, it's hard to, we didn't really know. We kind of had to play around with it a little because it's like, and then Amy and Sutter get it on. Like, you don't really know how to, like, he touches her breast. Like, we didn't know how graphic to get. So there were a lot of playing around with it until it sort of felt elegant and honest to us. At that time, it was actually a studio movie. And as I was discussing before, one of the studio people said, I want more description of the sex. And he said, and his other note was, in the party scene, can there be a wet t-shirt contest? And we said that's really not the movie we're trying to make here. That's some of the battles you actually have to fight when you make a studio movie. But with the sex scene, it was just about sort of finding the right levels. And then trusting the director, because when you shoot a sex scene, it's what they call a closed set. So most days, the actors are doing their thing, and the rest of us are around a few monitors with headsets on, watching the action. And on a closed set, there are no monitors. So we are listening, but we can't see anything. And in the room where the sex scene is happening are the actors, the director, the cameraman, maybe one or two other people. So it's a very sensitive thing for the actors and for everyone involved. But I did not get to see any of that footage until weeks later. So you don't really know how that's going to turn out.
The director, James, encouraged improv on set, correct?
Yeah, and it was always a discussion. So there were certain lines that Miles and Shailene felt, I'm not sure my character would say that. Even Kyle Chandler, who obviously, if you've seen Friday Night Lights, he's incredible. He showed up on set, and the character was not this cold. And he wanted to eliminate a few lines that he felt were the father trying to build a bridge with his son. And he had spent so much time studying this character and decided that character made a decision years ago to not have a relationship with his son. So he's not going to give him anything in that moment. And it was great to see. I mean, we had so many actors, Kyle and the others, that were so prepared. So, if you're the kind of writer and you feel like don't change a word, I'm not sure making a movie is for you. This is a collaborative thing, and we were lucky to just have great actors and a great director who understood the material and what we were trying to do.
But does improv scare you as a screenwriter? The fact that an actor can essentially change the course of the film in any given scene?
True, but that's where good casting comes in. So our casting people worked for free on this movie for about 3 or 4 years, trying to find the right people. And we went through 4 or 5 versions of the cast until we got to who you saw. And partly that's because of scheduling, because of money, financing, people got too old. It's true. It's actually one of the things when you make a movie about young people, you really do have a window, and then suddenly you realize, wow, our entire cast looks 30. That happened a couple of years ago.
Doesn't stop TV, though.
Well, yeah. Anyway, in the case of this, they improv. Are there a couple of times where the actors might take the improv a little too far? Always, but sometimes that's just part of their process of you sort of see how far you can take it until you bring it back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right there.